Sweet. Well,
Tara.
nice to meet at least a couple of you guys who I don't really know. So I'm Tara. I am here in Atlanta, Georgia. Actually, nobody's in Atlanta. We're all like outside of Atlanta. So I'm technically like 30 minutes north of Atlanta, but we say Atlanta. So I say y'all a lot. And I am probably best known for working for Gravy and the little rocket ship that could. And there I did a lot of stuff, but most recently was both in partnerships as well as sales development. So I started, built, and basically handed off our SDR team, and it is flying high. So I'm a big fan, love sales, love SDRs, love communication. So now I am doing my own thing. I've got my own little biz that's a little startup that could, as far as communication strategy, helping SDR managers lead really well and really dive into doing what we're going to do today. So lots of pitches, lots of communication, writing, video, all the things just to make people communicate better, whether you're in sales or not, because I think we're all in sales. That's my little secret.
Okay, pizza.
Oh my gosh, absolutely yes on pineapple. I'm a weird person, but I'll take it.
Okay. Wow, starting it off strong. Rashmi.
Awesome. Hey guys, my name is Rashmi. I'm currently an enterprise business development rep at Lever, an ATS selling into the HR space. I arrived to this role with a varied background from inside sales to experiential marketing, and including most recently working in HR as a training and development professional, having completed my adult education and corporate training certificate, which was building on my Bachelor of Education from some years ago. So I'm really looking forward to kind of evaluating this today. I'm excited.
Pineapple on pizza.
Oh yeah. Okay. So like you can do whatever you want, but like I don't know who does it regularly is my thing. Like I've done it a couple of times, but like I'm not like a psychopath like on a Saturday, like I'm gonna have pineapple on my pizza. You know what I mean? So somewhere in between.
Listen, we're all for inclusive pizza, right?
Okay.
So Patrick, try and beat that.
I'm so sorry I'm about to do this to you guys. Patrick Downs, I'm the king of swing, the podcast host without the most, the living embodiment of the smiling teardrop emoji. I also happen to be the sales enablement manager at PandaDoc. I will literally eat anything, so yes, pineapple is good on pizza.
Oliver, I mean,
So my name's Oliver. I run my own company, which is a training consultancy specifically focusing around sales and leadership. So today's a great event for me to be here today. I run my own kind of firm. My ICP is really your call center, mid-range for a lot of different kind of travel agencies, sales products, you name it. I love my food, and I'm going to agree with everybody else on here. Pretty much, pineapple on pizza is a yes from me. Nice. But it's got to have spicy sausage on there as well.
Oh.
Wow. Oh, take that, Michaud.
Yeah. I was like, I almost feel like I should be contrarian and say that I think pineapple is abhorrent to put on pizza, but the truth is that it's actually my favorite pizza.
Oh.
There's this like really fancy pizza company in Toronto called Maker Pizza that has, I think it's called the 5-0, and it's pineapple, bacon, and jalapenos. It's very, very good.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm on board for that. And then something about me, I guess, right?
Why not? I mean, unless there's a plot twist and you're here to sell us pineapple pizza.
Plot twist! Everybody go to your mailbox. There's a pizza. I'm Michaud Garneau. I have a company called Weird Is Nrml. I do leadership development. Mostly I work with new leaders, so companies that are growing rapidly. So maybe a company like PandaDoc or Lever or Gravy that's adding headcount rapidly and putting people from the IC role into a manager position. I work with them on the like human interaction side of things. So a lot of soft skill development from a tactical lens.
All right, man. So now you get to wear the other hat. We're here to give you feedback, and I think you gave us some ideas in the email, but you tell us what the best use of the next 45-ish minutes are in terms of do you want to just kind of throw things out there and get our feedback? Do you want us to do, somebody gets to be the victim and do some role playing?
Victim? It'd be fun. Patrick wants to do it.
I'm just going to put my hands up here. I can't be on the other end of this role play because I love leadership as much as you do. And if you try and sell me, I'm going to take it every single time. So I can't do it.
That's actually an interesting point, which is where oftentimes the people I talk to love leadership, right? Like when someone takes a call with me, it's somebody within an organization that's for sure bought in. And so then the struggle or like the thing to work on is how to push that forward, how to get the approval, how to be like, yeah, it's a bit more expensive than like this company, but it's going to actually be good and your employees are going to like you for running it instead of being like, I have to go to this shit training and I don't want to work here anymore.
So would you say that's maybe one thing you'd like to, dial into a little bit today is like,
yeah,
when you get the Olivers and the Taras on, they're like, yeah, I'm sold, like, let's do this. But then how do you almost like help them internal sell?
Yeah, how do I push it over the edge? Like I'll talk to people. So something that's been happening lately is I've kind of dialed in my cold outreach. I've started doing video using Loom, and it's converting at like a pretty at like a pretty high rate. Spending a lot more time prospecting than I used to, but really like going deep into the careers page of the company and making sure that there's philosophical alignment. So that's been helping. And then some of the spots where I've been getting no's, it is the goat. Some of the spots where I've been getting no's, or sometimes people will go with a bigger training organization because it can be A, cheaper, and B, have a more robust offering. So instead of getting me for leadership, somebody else for, I don't know, like some other sort of training that they have to run internally, they can go to this one-stop shop. So
would you say if you were, so let's break it down a little bit. Like,
yeah,
would you say your ICP, like who you sell to is super crystal clear? Like you just now need to break the doors down?
kind of, yeah.
And then when you get an Oliver or a Tara, like you just described a bunch of those things, but if we dive a little deeper there, would you say that, company X is often brought in because it's just a better well-known name, or they deliver some things like, I don't know, a bunch of metrics after that you don't, that may or may not actually be useful, but somebody higher up the totem pole says, oh, this looks good, we check this box off. But like you said, most of the people roll their eyes about the training.
Yeah, I think there's components of that. And again, I don't get full details on exactly why someone has gone with someone else. But yeah, definitely. So that's one of the challenges is they go, with someone bigger, and it's probably for some of those reasons, Francois. And then the other thing that happens is they often just won't do it. Like it's that they won't do anything.
So your biggest competitor is no decision.
Yeah. You're like, timing's not right, or let's wait until COVID's over, or and sometimes that drags on and on. And I'm like, you gotta fire, because it's real for these people and you wanted to get this training. And like you're already telling me that people are leaving, and so waiting and waiting and waiting isn't really going to solve that problem.
Well, I mean, I don't want to put you on the spot, and I don't know if we actually have to do this, but
yeah,
it might be worth like going through almost like a quick role play of like you talking to one of us as a prospect. But I'm curious, like I could see a lot of nodding, and I'll pick on Tara, for example. Like if he sent one of these amazing Loom videos to you and you were like, okay, let's talk, help us out, like to sell it to leadership, what would you be thinking, or like help Michaud out maybe, like what, because I think you probably see the benefit, but you also probably know there's those unmeasurable benefits, if you will.
Yeah. So I think, just listening to you, number one, I mean, I completely resonate. And so the word that keeps coming to me is, again, something that I'm super passionate about, is what makes you different, not what makes you better. Because when you're trying to go toe to toe to a big organization that's technically cheaper and, you're just going to bring in the people who are looking at the bottom line, then yes, there's going to be an element of absolutely that's an objection to overcome, but also, is that your target audience? Are those the people that you even want to, because they're already devaluing your offering? Again, this is a bigger, like, they may not be worth it to you, whether that's too small and they're just super budget conscious, or they have already had experience maybe with a larger training organization. But I think for you to hone in, and what you can really take away from this is your differentiator of not what makes you better and what, package you can offer and why there's a more robust offering here, or do I need to add all of these features and bells and whistles, but what makes working with you different, and specifically how your program is going to translate well into my reps, and how that's going to make them ultimately happier, more fulfilled, and more successful, not just in business, but at life, because that matters to me and that makes my life easier. So I want to know why you're different, not necessarily why you're better, if that helps.
And you're defining different versus better, where better is tying into almost like better from a purely business standpoint, cheaper, more bells and whistles, that sort of thing, and different is how does it actually apply?
Yes, and what you can compete in. So that's the differentiator. If you're like, hey, where I am right now is not at a level where I can offer my services at this rate, and I can't give you, again, like Francois was saying, all of this reporting, all this, that probably doesn't matter anyway. But where my eye is going, or where most people are, is like, hey, here's this shiny whistle that I define training as. And this is your opportunity to redefine that in terms of how you bring a different approach to that. Maybe it is the more human, maybe it is a case study and this specific technique or this specific thing that I do and I do well that maybe company X actually doesn't do, or maybe they gloss it over because they're offering so much, they're going so wide. We'll actually go super deep on this one thing or these two things, and this is how I'm going to help your team specifically in your reps get to whatever it is that I want, that I really care about. And I know in talking with all of your different people, everybody's going to have a little bit different, hey, this is what I want out of it, and that's what you're uncovering and discovering. But for me, as I'm sitting here listening to that, I don't necessarily am like, oh, that would be a big objection to me, because money is money. When it comes down to what am I going to get in return from it, if it's $1,000 or if it's 10,000, you just have to keep doing the math in your head. If that's what I care about, what is the differentiator that's going to get me actually what I want that you can offer that's just different? Instead of going like toe to toe on, they offer this, well, I offer this,
Yeah, and so within that, I guess that means that then I have to be able to have that conversation back and forth instead of somebody being like, hey, we've decided, like, we have a meeting, and then they're like, oh, we've decided to go with someone else. How do I do that?
I mean, I'm happy to keep going. Anybody else want to jump in? Because I'm like, I could do this, and I want to take our time. So I think there's a couple ways, but I'll let anybody else who's got thoughts on that.
Francois, you're on
You're on
mute.
mute, Francois.
I said nobody's putting their hand up, so I'd keep going, Tara.
Okay. Yeah. So I think obviously, yes, you don't want to wait till that. So if we're talking about backing up things, you don't want to wait till no to get to the objections, So in that conversation, in that discovery, and just the back and forth talking of, hey, what are your needs? What are you looking for? What, as you're having that conversation, you're not talking at someone, but you're talking with just like the same things. Honestly, this is the greatest time to practice what you're actually offering and bring that into your sales conversation, because if you're talking about the human element and caring and all of these soft skills, when you bring that into me talking with you and are like blowing me away with just who you are and your differentiator and how you maybe get me to open up, how you lead me to whatever conversation that needs to have, how you uncover some maybe really hard things of like, hey, what's the crap going on in your team right now? And your ability to get me talking and to get me comfortable is actually displaying the skills that you're like, hey, you know, this conversation we just had, you know how easy it was to talk to me, totally hypothetical right now.
Yeah.
This is what, imagine if, and then painting that picture of like, hey, imagine if your next one-on-one or your next team meeting or your, you know, SDR's next prospect call or cold call, imagine if they were able to have these kind of skills, or they were able to lead themselves in such a way that they could get to the kind of comfort that you have right now, that you and I are having. This is what I do. This is how I can help you. So you're showing, not just telling, and you're bringing yourself.
I love being explicit about that as well. Like,
if I can jump in on a couple of things as well. Like,
yeah, thank you,
so
Tara.
looking, yeah, sorry. I just kind of stepped away from Tara there. I do apologize. But looking at your ICP, because obviously you're worried about getting that decisions and kind of getting that final foot across the door. Are you speaking to the right people? Are you speaking to the right decision makers? So I've run L&D in companies and call centers for the last 12 years. And one thing that I've learned, especially going from company to company, is some people have the approval and the people that kind of sit there and say, yes, we want this in here, but other people won't actually have the ability to do that. I remember I joined a company, I got given quite a few $1 million budget straight off the bat. I couldn't authorize a paperclip. I could go in there, I could sit down, we could have these conversations. You could tell me everything that you wanted. And I've watched some of your videos on your website. Passion comes through completely. You can see it. And for me, I would be sold on that straight away, as I said at the very beginning of this conversation. But I couldn't be the one. You could send me your proposal. We could sit down for 3 hours and I go, okay, great. Let me think about it. Behind closed doors, I then run up about 30 people up the chain before I get anybody that comes back to me and says, well, do you know what? Let's have another meeting about this. Let's sit around the table. Let's discuss it. Then I've got you phoning me going, how's it going? I'm sat there in the background going, yep, no, we're good. Yeah, we're good. Right. Panicking like duck legs under the water, thinking, it's chasing me, but I can't do anything. So my question to you is, are you going after the right people in these businesses? When you're prospecting, do you know if you're hitting the right heads to speak to?
So yeah, that would be something helpful to get some feedback on, especially from, like, I've never worked within an organization, so I'm not always totally sure. I've always been on the outside, and that's straight up like a blind spot for me. What I have been doing is going after VP level HR, or like a CHRO, or like chief people officer kind of deal. And those are the people that I have been talking to.
Yeah, I think, I mean, depending until I kind of get a full clear picture of what your ICP is and who you're going after, but I'm assuming it's your corporates all the way down to small businesses that have those frontline leaders. And from what I gathered from your site and the information that I looked at, it's those kind of first-time managers that are stepping into those roles, that don't get that training, that don't get that support. That is a big passion of mine. If you look at my post on LinkedIn, I love that more than anything, because people don't get the training. People are let down. And when you come across with your passion, with your products, what you're trying to sell, you will resonate with so many training managers. You will resonate with so many heads of site. But it's understanding who's going to sit there and go, yes, we need this. Yes, we've got the budget. And unfortunately, during COVID, I mean, one of the biggest slaps in the face that I got was people just didn't want to spend the budget because they didn't know where they're coming out of. Yeah. But I think from a pivot perspective, and maybe I don't know if you've considered something like this or it's included in what you do, but you know, coming out of COVID now, everyone's kind of going, I say normality. It's not normality, but it's our version of it now. Is kind of going in there with everything that you do, but saying, let's look at these first-time leaders that are now being promoted remotely, that are now being promoted on Zoom, that are now being promoted in an environment where we're talking like this day on day. I can't sit down with you and have a one-to-one and read your body language and have those kind of discussions. Training doesn't exist on a whole like that. And maybe that's something to include. Maybe that's something that people want to hear or want to kind of listen to actually go, do you know what, we hadn't thought of. How are we going to promote somebody from a frontline sales rep in a virtual environment and give them the coaching and the skills that they need to become that line manager and then manage a team remotely at the same time. Because that's a tough job because you're not getting the support. And if I remember when I was first promoted into a managerial role, I would have my manager over my shoulder watching everything that I was doing, so they could take me away, they could give me feedback, they could talk to me about what I was doing right, what I was doing wrong, and I was learning. You haven't got that manager watching over your shoulder, sat there while you're having a one-to-one with a team member, you're coaching them, you're providing them with critical feedback, which we all know feedback is something that we all need every single day. And I think, Francois, you got even something coming up on feedback. I saw it yesterday and I was like, exactly that. And when you were talking about that a minute ago, that rang bells because you can't learn that in this environment.
You can't learn in that same way.
No.
Yeah. And that's, I guess it comes down to positioning, right? Because I do that work, like my whole program's virtual, and I transitioned it to virtual. I also am a consultant with another agency where we do train the trainer for like the government, big banks, really large organizations that have internal L&D teams on how to take their training and make it virtual. So I had this like benefit of being able to take all of that and like, okay, how do I run a role play virtually? How do I get them practicing a one-on-one with coaching, with interaction, and running all of that in a virtual world? And I've been able to really nail those exercises, and people are getting a lot out of it. And from what I'm hearing you say, and from what I think it is missing in the way that I'm communicating that, is again back to also what Tara, right? Not Tara. Tara, is really being explicit on this is how that applies to there. Which
I think to kind of piggyback off of the explicit comment that you're making, I really love the branding. First of all, I just want to say the weird is normal. I absolutely love that because learning is uncomfortable. You feel yucky, your brain is making new formations, you're agitated, you're like, oh, what is this? Until then it becomes comfortable and then it's your new normal. So I love that. I think that's brilliant. So like, if you can really lean into that and talk about, to the point of it's our kind of new normal, you're making this weird, taking normal. I think you have a lot that you can lean into, but you said two really interesting things. You said there's no fire under people to take this forward. That's something you see a lot in HR. It's unfortunate that even though we support so much of the business, HR tends to be like an afterthought. Training budget's usually the first budget to go. It's always like at the end of the year, HR is like, oh no, if we don't get this training in, we're not going to get this money next year. So they'll like squeeze in a training at the end so that they'll get the budget. It's not really like a plan from before. So I think if you can talk to the right person, which can be a challenge, but if you can even just talk to a person and communicate to them what you're trying to do, how you're trying to make it the new normal, I think you appeal to like that younger kind of person who understands what learning is like. I see it in your branding and stuff. But something I found really true with HR professionals is they don't know how to make the business case, to the point that Oliver was making, that he was like, yeah, this is great, this is awesome. Then he has to go up the chain for 30 people. And HR is one department that I's have to be dotted, T's have to be crossed, because they're kind of the example for the rest of the organization, right? So you're not going to jump any tape there or anything like that. So you need to help them make that business case so it's easy and flawless for them. What's the return on investment here? What's it really going to look like? How am I going to do this virtually? And you need to be explicit. And I think it's true. It's not about how you're better, but just how you're different. So yeah, definitely +1 to all of that.
how do I find out who the right person to talk to is?
I think it's a balance between.
No, go ahead, Rashmi, go ahead.
I think it's a balance between the right person because of like the title and the ICP, and like they could make the decision, and the right person as in like maybe a learning and development specialist, but you can tell from their LinkedIn that, they're kind of on the heartbeat of what's happening in the space. They're excited about it. They care about leadership. They're posting things. They really see where the space is heading. So at Lever, for example, we're kind of looking at where the ATS space is heading. And so I know I want to talk to people who see where recruiting is going. So you want to find the person that even if they can't make the decision, they're excited about what's going to happen with learning, and you go to them and then you help them make the business case, because they're in HR, they're conscientious, they're that's not their thing. So you help them make the business case, the proposal even maybe, and help push it up, I think.
Okay.
Also, I recommend interviewing your clients. We talk about like the jobs to be done framework a lot. That could help you find what the internal decision-making process for the kind of people you want to work with are. And just it's helpful in general to define like what their day-to-day responsibilities are, what their problems are, and how you actually help them, to define what their state was before they talked to you and what it was after, which you can then replicate into a sales process that you can use for everybody you talk to.
So Pat, sorry, Michaud, I was going to just
Yeah, go ahead.
well, I had a couple thoughts earlier, but I want to pick on Patrick there because he is in a sales training manager role. So, I mean, we have like, to I think what Rashmi was saying, right? Like you may not ultimately have that final decision making process. So what are you having to sell to the person above you that signs the check?
Yeah, it's bad. Like even in my role, I don't have any authority. Like if I want something bought, I have to write like a 5 to 6 page dissertation on why it's going to work out, and then I have to review the budget with our CFO and like pick apart exactly where it's going to fit. And then obviously you need to look at other people, so you're always going to be looking at 2 to 3 others that are involved, and that's even if you can get it to like consideration level. Sometimes I'll bring it to somebody and it just gets shot down immediately. So you never want to get too far in a project with someone that doesn't have the authority, because it's just going to get shot down. Like there's several projects I spent like 3 to 4 hours on that took to my boss, just killed immediately, done. So
Well,
you need to figure out who you can get to that's just not going to get killed immediately for most of your projects.
And that's when Rashmi was talking, like part of me was wondering, and this sounds awful, like you were saying the HR learning development people sometimes don't have that power, or they get stopped. And so part of me is wondering, like, is ultimately that CFO, CEO really the person you need to be talking to? Because, this is about, they're probably wondering, like, either is this how going to help me save because of less churn? Is this going to help me drive more revenue? And that's the narrative you're trying to weave into ultimately, I think, right? It's kind of a question to the group too.
Yeah, I mean, to kind of, sorry, go on.
I found a lot of success with top-down prospecting for this very reason.
Okay.
Going to like the CFO or CEO level and then saying, hey, John, I know you're probably not in charge of this, but ultimately you're going to sign off on it. Who is in charge of your document process? And then I get a direct referral to the person that would then sell the CEO later because he doesn't have time. So I never have an issue with that because I was just told by the top person who I need to talk to.
And just kind of finishing off on what Francois was saying a minute ago about who do you go to? If I run the last 4 companies that I ran training for, so 4 jobs ago, I was the training manager and I had to go to the L&D director. They were the one that signed it off. They were the one that had the budget. Then I moved from there into my first kind of BPO training role, ran the department there, and that was the HR director. They had the budget. Again, they're both call centers, 2 very different roles. The one after that, head of L&D, and I went to the CSO who signed it off. He was the one that had the money. And then the most recent one, I was the L&D director. So I thought, yes, I'm the one that signs off the budgets. No, I had to then go to the operations director, who would then take that proposal to the MD, and then the MD would sign it off. So 4 very similar companies, same industry, every single one of them had a different one. So I agree with the top-down approach. I think you're right there in that sense. But one thing that I can probably suggest is I've been using Sales Navigator to do something very similar from my prospecting. And what I've been doing is I've been reaching out to kind of like ops directors and site directors in different industries, and just building a relationship, not really jumping into my kind of pitch, not jumping into myself. And then eventually in conversation, just say, hey, look, out of curiosity, training this, training that, who signs the checks basically in a nicer way. And just kind of finding that name and then stalking them on LinkedIn. And that's how I've been doing it. And that's how I've been reaching out. Obviously, I've not gone into the deep depths of stalking like Facebook and Instagram and things like that. But LinkedIn, Sales Navigator was my way in.
Okay, I find it difficult to get a response on LinkedIn.
Really, LinkedIn is my I see, like, people don't answer phones, they don't answer emails, and then I hit them up on LinkedIn. They're like, hey, I'm like, oh, okay. But I think sometimes it's just, what do you find that you're getting success with? Is it the videos and emails?
The videos and the emails lately, and
What?
in like who I've been like I've got this podcast that I'm doing now where I interview CEOs of companies basically that I would want to work for.
I like it.
Surprise.
Which has actually been working quite well. But finding to also then get insight from them of like where will you respond? And they're like, well, I never look at LinkedIn because they just get bombarded with messages, but they have to check their email because they have to check their email.
It might sound like woo-woo or whatever, but I've found that there's no one answer to what it's what energetically matches with you.
Right.
It sounds crazy, but everybody has their thing. Some people kill it on phones. Some people have a magic touch that people answer the phone every time. I don't know what it is. The only way I can explain it is there's some like sort of weird energetical thing going on that I can't see. So we'll just go with that. So if that's what's working for you, like lean into it, send videos all the live long day. It can be very draining, but really lean into that. And I just want to loop back to something before I forget. And also the questions that you were asking were, do you have a sense of urgency to buy? Are you excited, etc.? So I think we're looking at, the positives, look at what can happen if you do this and stuff. I think you need to start asking the question, what's going to happen if you don't have leadership training? What's going to happen if we don't get people geared up in this new world? What's going to happen if everyone's remote and they can't be coached the same way? What's going to happen to your organization that's scaling the way it is, the great work you're doing, the values you have in place that you really want to trickle from top down? That's the way change happens in an organization. And then the change you want to affect then out in the world with whatever it is that your business is doing. How is that going to happen at the speed that you're growing if you don't have leaders in place that know what they're doing? You need to kind of poke at their fear, because I think that elicits a stronger response than the like, ooh, leadership feels so good.
Right.
But oh my God, you don't have leadership, you're screwed. But like, don't say you're screwed, but like you're screwed, right? So
Right, like this could be bad.
Yes.
Yeah, and it probably already is bad, like honestly.
Right. That's why they're talking to me.
I mean, exactly, so I 1,000 times, yes, to absolutely everything. It's that pain, but it's that imagine if pain. And that's even worse. It's the perceived, yes, I feel this tickle, I feel this, like managers, well, I just promoted great people, or I've got great people, surely they're going to do it. But I love that, because it's not just the pain they're feeling now, the pain that they know, but it's painting that picture of like, oh, crap, like the wheels are about to fall off. And also taking in the fact that, yes, we have been in COVID and it's all, but I mean, God willing, who knows what's going to happen, but probably things are going to start exploding and going in a better direction. But again, it's like, if you don't have those wheels in place, you don't have those guardrails now. I love that. How are you going to grow? How are you going to meet the demand? Because it's coming, so it's like that positive and that negative, because you want to tease the, hey, there's good stuff coming and that's great. And I know that you're preparing for that, but all of that good stuff you're not going to get because of this, huge issue that you've got about lack of leadership. So that was so well said.
Thank you. And one thing I really want to also, what I'm hoping that I'll see a lot of is that even if we do return back into the office, as we hopefully continue with at least a hybrid model where people can work remotely, it's going to be more important than ever to really be connected to the ethos of a company, because you're not in the building all the time, you're not connected. So that comes from strong leadership, that comes from reinforcing the values of the company really strongly. So I think you really need to lean into that. And just as Tara said, it's not just all negative, but it's like, look at all the positive that's happening, but look at the negative that could take the air out of this very quickly, and really push into that, I think.
Amazing. Okay.
Michelle, I have a question for you.
For me?
Actually, yes, I do. First of all, I love you, by the way. I haven't had a chance to say that. I really like your energy. And I DM'd Rashmi directly and said that your laugh was giving me good brain chemicals.
Same. Same. Happy chemicals.
So thank you for that, first of all. I can't even imagine what it's like to be in a sales call with you. I feel like that would be incredible. So my question actually is, do you have a structured sales process and methodology that you follow every time?
All the salespeople around you just died a little. I don't know if you saw, but we all went off screen.
No, not even close.
That's the clip for this video, by the way. Right there.
No, like I have
Laugh
no
response.
idea what I'm doing. You know, like I know how to talk to people, I know how to ask, I know how to do that stuff, but I don't.
But Michaud, I mean, your formal training prepared you for this, right?
With like clown and improv and that sort of work.
100%, yes.
See, that's the video sales pitch you need to do.
Yo, my video sales pitches are dope. They're
He's like, don't come for me right now.
yeah, yeah, I feel very good about them.
But I mean, Patrick, you know, I mean, he can get the door open, but I think what's what he's been dialing in on is just like closing is really the challenge, really. And but in all seriousness, it's not that you have zero process, Michaud, but like it's pretty.
It's loosey-goosey, and like I don't know, I don't even know how long my discovery call should be. I like read about things, so I don't just go in and tell people stuff. I ask them questions and try to find out what's happening, and I oftentimes won't get into even show them the program if it doesn't make sense yet, and but
I like you're saying it with like a furrowed brow. I enjoy this.
yeah, just like this is what I'm doing.
Like,
No idea.
More and more, like your eyes are disappearing.
I'm just like,
I know. I have a question. It may be a bit of a leading question, but if I'm like totally off the mark,
love a leading question.
But never been in an organization, been doing this on your own for so long. You strike me as a creative, this is my baby. Do you struggle to really push and do the sales pitch and the you should pick me, or are you're good at that? You're okay with that?
I'm trying to think of like a scenario where that manifests itself.
Like
I feel very confident in being like, this is very good. It's also helpful that I've done it a bunch of times and get very positive feedback from people. So it's like, that's, yeah. So I guess maybe more so than that is I think I struggle to find myself within the conversation where I would have the opportunity to do that.
Okay.
Right? Like it feels like I have this discovery call, first call, and then they're like, hey, send me something. Maybe I should have gone over this in the beginning, but it's like I have this call, they're stoked. Hey, send me something. I send them the thing, and then it sort of like goes flat for a little while, and then it's from there that I need, maybe I'll find out that they didn't have budget, or that they're dragging their heels, or have gone with someone else, or are pushing it back to fucking like 2036 or something.
Yeah.
Can I just one question? So after you send them the pack, the presentation, your information, do you set the tone on that initial call that you're going to send it and then follow up X, Y, and Z, time, dates, location, whatever? Or is it kind of left to them when you say, hey, I'm going to send you this, let me know when you want to talk? Where do you stand when
Typically, I'll send it and be like, here you go. If I don't hear back from you by this day, I'll follow up.
Because one thing that I found that works in that scenario sometimes is saying there and then on that call, setting the time and date whilst you're on the phone. I'm going to send you the calendar invite. You get it in your mailbox, and then kind of without saying basically read it because I'm going to call you out when I call you back, but saying at that point that I'm going to call you next Friday at 1 o'clock. So if you make sure you're up to speed by Friday at 10, just nudge, make sure you read it. 9 times out of 10, they're probably not going to have read it by the time you call back anyway, or they might ghost you, which I found. But then we just kind of follow up, keep setting the tone, keep reminding them, and bump them with emails. A lot of people don't like to bump and kind of, I get it in mind going, oh, I'm just sending my notification back to the top of your inbox, all that kind of stuff. We see those emails. Some people don't like to do it. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but it's always worth a little nudge, in my opinion.
I had a fun sales nudge that I did to someone the other day. They had I had like had a meeting with them once and they apologized for not having gotten back to one of my messages in that call. And they said that they felt bad about it. They were talking, sent in a proposal, they were going to the CEO, and then I sent them a message being like, hey, just wanted to check and see like how that call went, see what's up, and then crickets. And I was like, fuck, I'm going to push this message. And I was like, hey, I know when we were talking on the phone that you were very upset about not getting back to me on that previous email. So I just want to make sure that doesn't happen again.
I don't want you to be sad. Yeah. I like
You're
that. That's
human.
funny.
Like you just were normal, you know, and you're like, hey, I'm going to call it out. And that's what made it fun, is because like, that's what you do with a friend. If your friend's like, oh crap, I didn't answer my text, or so you're like, hey, don't want you to do that again. So you're having fun and you're letting you shine through. And I think that that's what's going to help break the barriers. But I don't think that, I mean, busyness, not getting back is all, that's a problem, of course, for everybody. But I do think, I love what Patrick put in the chat about setting that tone, and even, you know, what Oliver was saying, making sure you're getting that agreement of like, hey, we know this is just a discovery call. I mean, I'm basically just an SDR right now. I'm just telling you about what it is. I'm giving you the lowdown, trying to gauge interest, seeing if you're the right person, all of those things. But to actually move it forward and to have really that confirmation, going through the proposal, all of that, if you're not fitting it into that call, then that absolutely is you can't, or you should just take a step back and be like, okay, this is a 2 call, this is a 3 call, this is a 4 call process, whatever it is for you, and then lead with that kind of urgency. So knowing like, okay, if I'm not going to close them on this call, that's fine. That typically is normal. But my close has got to be confirming the next conversation. Like this isn't a, hey, when you feel like it, when it's out there, because I don't feel like doing the things I want to do half the time, much less the stuff that's like not in my radar. So you kind of have to think through like, okay, not just how do I keep it in front of them, but really how do I create that urgency on that first call, in that first conversation of, hey, we are expecting a next step here. We are expecting a next call, a next conversation, and whatever that is your point of the first conversation, is to get to that next conversation, not just, great, I've given you some great information to think about, because that's not going to be urgent for anybody, and especially not for somebody who's trying to make a decision about a program.
And should I be in that first call confirming something like budget and timeline before?
I would confirm as much as you can,
right? Okay.
Because you've got them. The only guarantee that you have when you're talking to anybody is the time that you have right now.
Right.
You want to get to that next one, but if you can get as much answered, I mean, good grief, if you can send that proposal in that first call, why not? You know, the point isn't to drag it out, but if right now in your process that urgency isn't built in of that expectation, then I would add as much as you can in the time that you have with somebody.
Okay. That's
and just jumping off of something back there that Tara said about actually getting as much information as possible, is because if they aren't aware of your budgets or the expectations or anything like that, when they receive that document from you, you might scare the crap out of them. They're never going to speak to you again because you haven't told them how much it's going to cost them or how long we're expecting those guys to be in training for. I've had people speak to me go, "I'm going to you expect me to take them off the phones for this amount of time? You didn't tell me about that on your first call." And I went, I had my hands up. I went, all right, fair enough. Maybe I didn't ask those questions initially. So I completely agree with what Tara said. Get as much information as possible, because then you know that you are more likely to have that call if you can answer all of those questions when you send your proposal across.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Rashmi, you were about to say something.
This might be super basic, but do you have like the sequence of steps and how many calls you're like, how I'm going to do it over a month and it's going to be like 5 calls and emails and schedule it and put it on your calendar?
For my program?
For your like reaching out to these people.
No,
you just go, okay. That might help you stay on top of it, and also kind of help, like, it's important to situate the prospect, of course, but it's also important to situate yourself so you know where you're at. Like, am I early on in my outreach, midway, am I almost done? And also it helps you kind of keep your energy up. I joke that as a SDR, you have to be like a golden retriever, just hey, get my email? Hey, did you get my email? Hey, and you can't get down. They didn't respond. You just have to stay positive and keep going. But if you are like, I don't know when this will end, I'm emailing forever, it's hard for you to keep that energy as well, right? So if you plot it out over a month or two, this week I'm going to call 3 times, next week email,
Yeah.
You know what's coming. You can pace yourself, pace your energy, and you can let it go mentally. Go to sleep at night and not be like, oh my God, tomorrow I got to call them. It's on your calendar, do it. And when it finishes, try somebody else in the company if it doesn't work.
Okay. Patrick, you dropped something in the chat that, thank you, that said, I should hire a sales consultant for my manager consultancy. I almost hired someone.
You should.
But I
It's
talked to
worth it.
them and I was like, you're just going to make me do all this stuff.
Yeah, that's why you hire them.
Well, I thought I'd be better off hiring like an SDR or something. Instead
Yeah,
of
but
paying
then they're not
someone
going to know
20
what to
grand
do.
to teach me how to be one.
I know, but the problem is like most SDRs that you hire that you could probably afford right now aren't going to know how to do what the sales consultant knows what to do.
That's true.
So the sales consultant will actually be able to give you the foundation of your sales process, and then you can hire an SDR.
There you go. 100%. That's exactly right.
Upfront investment.
It's going to save you.
I know it
so
sucks.
much
It
time.
It
sucks.
sucks. It's so expensive.
It sucks really bad.
Like, you want me to pay you 20 grand and you're just going to tell me to do the stuff that like I have a vague idea of what I have to do already and I'm not doing it?
But what they're going to do is they're going to sequence it out for you. And that's honestly, I think one of the best, just, I don't know, benefits of that is you're going to have a plan, you know, and you're going to have steps and you're going to know what order to do things in, when to bring things in. Like there's so much clarity and just not wasting the brain space, especially as a founder, as a creative, as a visionary. And you should be out there selling the message and selling the brand instead of getting into the weeds and diving into step by step by step by step. And that's why you're upset, because you're like, I don't want to do this stuff. It's not fun. You know, I'm like, I don't do fun stuff. I don't really want to do fun stuff. But what that's going to do is it's going to remove the burden of having to get into the weeds, to knowing when to say what, to do all of that. And then, yes, maybe at that point, you know, it does suck, but maybe you're like, you know what? I don't want to do all of this stuff. I want to do this one piece of it. So now I am going to hire an SDR, or I'm going to hire a full cycle AE, or whatever it is, so that I can focus on, you know, delivering the training, working on the material, doing the content, the stuff that you love. And you can just go ahead and offload everything that you're like, okay, this could be a barrier, but now you know what to do and how to do it and when to do it.
And Michaud, I mean, you know, here's a little, not a hot tip, but like almost like a secret. I mean, you could create a new identity, come on 5 on Friday and be whoever and say like, I need help building on my sales process.
Let's keep coming on with disguises.
Yeah.
Mustache next week.
I'll just
Different hat. There you go.
Oh my God, who is that? Is that Michael?
There we go.
totally different person.
I just changed the laugh though.
Yeah, the laugh is too distinct. Yeah.
I love that that's what you think other people laughing.
Is that what we sound like to you?
Yo, that needs to go in the promo for this episode. Oh God. Your ability to stay still scares me, Frank.
Oh man. Popped out of nowhere.
So you two in your disguises is the perfect screen capture for the front cover of this video.
And then
You think we spend that much time making thumbnails? We just upload whatever's there.
But the other thing I'll add is, you know, what I think is interesting is like with your company name, like Rashmi was saying, I love that because, you know, it's so true. But I think like the selling is awkward and the transactional part is awkward. So you guys remember when we used to go for lunch or dinner and we'd put our card on the table and they'd go and take it away, and now they bring the machine. It's like super weird, right? You're sitting there doing the transaction and it like breaks the vibe and it's just weird. And I think it's the same with selling. Like, you know, you may really want the service or product that I'm selling. And so what I really like to do early on is kind of take them through the steps. Like we're going to have this call and then maybe you got to get this in front of this person and we'll do that. And then I'll have to invoice you and then you'll pay it and then we'll start working. And so that way, when that happens, it's not weird and awkward. They're just like, oh, these were the steps you laid out. And they want to buy and they want to go through that, but nobody likes getting caught flat-footed at the end. And you're like, you know, what do you mean now you never told me about this? Like now you're kind of, it's weird, right? So I tried to like get that all out and just say, hey, here's the, like, they like what you're doing. Okay, here's the things I want to, you know, we'll probably have to have this meeting and I'll send you a proposal. And once you do it, you know, like just lay it all out there. Just get it out of the way.
Yeah. Okay.
and bring a pipe.
Okay, I got a few.
The legal ones.
Yeah, it's all legal in Canada.
Yeah, I was gonna be like,
I guess not all pipes, but.
How do we
Definitely not
segue?
tobacco pipes though.
Keep closing.
Okay, thank you all so much. That's super helpful.
But
Yeah.
you feel like we just threw a ton at you and
yeah, I
now
was
you
gonna,
gotta go
I was
and
gonna ask that.
like figure it out?
Yeah, like I have a bunch of notes.
Somebody needs to organize them for you.
I gotta hire someone to do something with it for me.
You need that consultant. I'm so on with Patrick. You just
I think I do.
Who was it that you were looking to hire?
I talked to a couple people, but like honestly, their sales process with me, I was like,
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Definitely hold out for someone you like.
yeah.
totally, and they've got to fit your vibe. I mean, between all of us, I bet we could send you some names of people who are just, again, that's going to totally be up to you. But
Mhm.
yeah, absolutely. If you're not jiving with them immediately, it's not going to work in the long.
And Michaud, just so you know, we didn't like trick you into coming on here to sell you a sales consulting.
I absolutely didn't think you did that.
But now I do a little bit.
I mean, that would be kind of smart. That's sort of like my podcast.
Well, Patrick, the funny thing is, how many sales consultants have we had on here?
We try to keep them out, typically.
Right, sales consultants
yeah.
wondering how to sell sales consultancy better.
Well, no, they want to sell the people that are coming on looking for advice, bro.
Oh, they want to
Yeah,
be like
we try to get them
one of the experts.
No,
Yeah.
I mean, all jokes aside, I'm like 99.9% certain everybody here would happily DM you after and say, hey, here's somebody I think I'd recommend because they're not jerks or wankers or whatever. So
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, I think that's good. We got 5 minutes. I'm thinking, do we give them some serious closing advice, or I've enjoyed the laughter. Like, this has been a great Friday break up to my monotony.
I've had a great time.
Yeah. You should come on as a participant sometime.
Yeah, for sure.
We'd love to have you back.
Oh, as a participant, right? Not as a sales professional. I'll be like, who knows?
No, also a sales professional.
No, I mean, anybody can give good feedback. There's no like, sometimes people are hesitant because they say I'm new in the role. I'm like, why can't anybody give objective feedback to me?
Right.
Anybody.
I'm in a couple mastermind groups, and we found when we started introducing founders and entrepreneurs into it, like there was a lot more value added to the group, even though it was mostly salespeople. So yeah, we'd love to have you back.
Sure, yeah, I would love to. It's
I'm
been
also
awesome.
wondering, like, for the group, like, is there any of these sales community groups that I think I've seen a few of you in that would be helpful, not so that he can try and figure out the sales process on his own, but maybe, like get some exposure to other people talking about that, so that when he has that discussion with the sales consultant, he's like, no, I think that one's going to work for me. You guys know what I mean? Like, just so he can see, I don't know, hear other people's way of doing it, so that he
I
can.
feel like he would fit in with Justin Michael's community.
Oh,
'Cause
really?
they're like a little quirky. Yeah, quirky peeps. You're a little quirky. You got that hat.
I got that hat. I got that tiny little orange hat.
So small.
So small, so bright.
I mean, Oliver and Tara, I think, I don't know if I've seen you in there, Rashmi, Thursday night sales, like, I mean,
Thursday night. I'm only allowed one. I'm just kidding. One happy hour. I've got too many kids and a husband. But
You're doing it with multiple kids. I struggled with one.
I'm still the kid.
they
So.
can fend for themselves. But Thursday night sales, it's
That's with like Amy.
Amy and Scott.
Okay.
And they
Okay.
are great shooting, as good of a people as you will get. So
Yeah.
that's just great. Like Francois was saying about just putting yourself in the ecosystem of immersion, like everything. There's going to be stuff that's applicable, stuff that's not. There's going to be corporate stuff, but it's great too, because it can also get you in the mind of the people you're going to be working with. And so even as you're thinking about new programs or new trainings, just putting yourself in their shoes and just hearing, okay, this is the constant stuff they're struggling as an IC or as, moving to a manager.
Right.
These are great conversations to have, and I'm sure multiple communities, but TNS is the only one I'm allowed to go to. I'm kidding.
there's no clowns there. So.
But I'll reach out after this, as I'm sure everyone will. And if I think of anything, if I see anything then I will happily pass that information on. And likewise as well, kind of, if we find any companies of who to go to and who to target, it's all relevant, right?
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you.
Well, I'll give everybody a minute back. I think this was a lot of fun. Hopefully, Michaud, you had fun.
Yes.
Hopefully you feel a few percentage points smarter. I do.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
In my brain chemistry, as Patrick said, chemicals are on the good side. So great way to end the Friday. Appreciate everybody making time for this. This has been lots of fun. Have a great weekend, everyone. And I'm sure we'll see you around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so
you.
much.
Everybody.
See you guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay.
Have a good weekend, y'all.
Ciao.